Put the needle on the record, put the needle on the record, put the needle on the record and dance with me.
Put the needle on the record and what you hear, memories getting sparked in the sound of your ear. We're talking records about the records that spoke to us, but even mention records that have broke to us. But records is a crime, get the AF. Check out this episode, we're completely deaf. We're talking records. We're talking records. We're talking records. We're talking records. That's right.
Welcome, record fans, enthusiasts, and geeks, to another episode in the continuing saga we like to call Talkin' Records, a show, a podcast devoted to the feels and lasting memories that sound recordings have made on us during our lifetimes. I am the Vital One, and along with Billy D, we thank you for listening in. We hope you're all safe and healthy during this strange historic time and hope to give you a little cheer for your ear. So, Bill, do we have enough charisma to do this show? Do we sure know something about Kiss's Dynasty album released in 1979? Let's find out and start the show. So let's get into some of the album artwork as we do.
I like it. I think, coming off of their 4 solo albums, each of their solo album had a profile picture, and this cover obviously has all 4 of them on it, and all 4 of their profiles. I almost think it kind of signifies that, they went off and did their own solo thing, and now they're back. Just reminds me of the Beatles cover too, as well, with the Fab Four.
The Fab Four. Yep, the Fab Four. Absolutely. Like, for me, I was not a fan of Kiss up until Kiss Meets the Phantom. So this was my jumping on record where I was begging my folks. I was like, please, can I have a Kiss record? So basically any record that they would actually give me during this time that was by Kiss, I was just gravitating to. But me also, this album cover, I really enjoyed this album cover because it was almost like a Hollywood Squares style thing, but there wasn't these bars that had them sectionalized, and obviously going back to the history of actually that we know now of Kiss, prior to their 4 solo albums. I had no idea what was going on with that at the time. So for me, as a jumping on point, this was an awesome Kiss album, and I was totally on board with whatever they were going to bring to us during this time. I really enjoyed this album cover. It shows them all, obviously in the Kiss makeup, the Demon, Star Child, Peter Criss, the Catman, and they're not showing themselves being sectionalized. And as we've learned as being grown-ups now, that during this time there was a little bit of a distancing going on in the group, I guess you could say. But when I was a kid, when I first saw this album, I was like, this is Kiss. This is my introduction to Kiss, and I was very excited to actually have this in my hands and just see it. And as an album cover, I was like, whoa, it's this is Kiss. All 4 of them, all 4 of the original members were there on the album cover. So it was very exciting, for me. I mean, I was gifted to this album. I didn't actually go out there and purchase it. I'm not sure if that was the same scenario with you. How did you get your hands on this album?
My parents were members of Columbia House Records. I remember that. It was the 11 records for a penny or whatever it was. And
couldn't you actually tape a penny to a piece of postal?
Yep. You taped your penny.
Tape your penny to a piece of post and then throw it into the mail and be like, hey, here's my promise to buy an album for $50 down the line. I remember those days. I was a Columbia member as well. Yeah, but I remember that too. That was awesome.
Yeah, so you had to, like you said, you had to buy an album every month for full price, which was way more than full price. And if you forgot or if you didn't buy something, they sent you whatever they felt like sending you, and they billed you for it.
To fulfill your membership to the cult, the membership cult of records.
Yep.
That was something, right? That was real.
It was cool though, because you got this catalog, the Columbia House catalog, and as kids, it was almost like Christmas, like how you would circle what you wanted in like the Sears or JCPenney catalog. It's kind of what we did with this Columbia House thing. So we got,
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, it was fun. We got to choose records, and for the solo albums, actually, is a jumping on point. I circled Ace, my brothers circled Gene and Paul. We had the solo albums to jump on to Dynasty. We just wanted it. The cover was definitely cool, but it wasn't something that, we found in a record store, searching for things by cover, flipping through the records and finding something that looks interesting. We were familiar with Kiss, and we knew we wanted it. We had to have it.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's go into the description. Dynasty is the 7th studio album by the American rock band Kiss, produced by Vinnie Poncia and released by Casablanca Records on May 23rd, 1979. It was the first time that the 4 original members did not appear together on the entire album. A lot of the genres that are listed of the album are hard rock, glam metal, and disco. Is it possible that this album was a little bit of scraps from their 4 solo albums? Like, when you listen to it now, it's a little different than when we listened to it when we were very younger. How do you feel about that?
I know that one of the reasons they did the solo albums in the first place was because Ace and Peter Kristen, they kind of felt left out of the whole songwriting process. And on Dynasty, they each had a song that they wrote on their own, for the record. Usually it was Paul and Gene either writing together or writing a whole song. So that would make sense to me that some of these were scraps from the solo albums. So some of the songs do sound like songs that were on the solo albums as well. They could have been written at the same time. That does make sense to me.
That's kind of a theory, right? I agree with that. So the top singles that were released off this album were obviously, as somebody or some people would say, the disco infused I Was Made for Loving You, and also Sure Know Something. So those are 2 singles that were released off this album. In my head, there were many songs on this album that I just was enamored by, but those were the 2 singles. So let's talk about those 2 singles very quickly, because they were both Paul Stanley singles, and there was always speculation. And if you look on the internets, the speculation is that Paul Stanley got in the producer's ear at this point and said, like, hey, these got to be the 2 songs that are going to headline this album. But the thing that I always found that was funny, we go back to this, you and I, when we talk about this, when I jumped on board with this, I didn't see this as a disco album, and I still can't label it as a full disco album. But I Was Made for Loving You obviously has a disco kind of touch to it. It's a little more dancey than usual Kiss fare at this time. And then Sure Know Something, for me, when I listen to it, has kind of like almost like a soft rock kind of verse thing going on. But then once it gets into the chorus, it's pure Kiss. I mean, it's pure anthemic stuff going on. Sure know something, sure know something. And like, for me, that's golden. But I have other tracks on this album that I actually really enjoyed. How do you feel about those 2 tracks just right off the bat?
I Was Made for Loving You is my favorite song on the album.
Yes.
It's just such a great song. And I didn't think it was disco at the time. It certainly didn't sound like disco to me at that time.
Right.
Disco was like the hustle, right? And it was, funkier stuff. I suppose this could be put into maybe like the Bee Gees kind of ABBA pop kind of disco genre. But again, I suppose I was young too, but it wasn't a disco record, it was just Kiss doing something different.
Right.
And
I agree.
Paul Stanley is Paul Stanley doing his awesome vocals.
Oh God, he's great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah, I Was Made for Loving You. That's my favorite track on the album. And surprisingly, because I was listening to it on Spotify recently, it's been streamed 260 million times.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which is
Wow.
That's astounding. It's their top song.
Wow.
The next song was Rock and Roll All Night, and that was only streamed 168 million. I Was Made for Loving You was streamed almost twice as many times as Rock and Roll All Night. I would have assumed Rock and Roll All Night is I would have assumed that was their most popular song of all time. But, if we're going to go by streaming, yeah, it was really interesting. Why is that? Is the younger generation more likely to listen to streaming services in general?
Sure.
Are the younger kids more likely to just be streaming in general? And, the older guys like us just have our records, or we've kind of put Kiss behind us altogether. But, so maybe younger kids like that song.
It's a great tune. Even like about 15 years ago, Paulina Rubio did a cover of it, and she's a pop Latina artist, and she did an amazing cover of it. And I remember jamming out to it, and I was like, wow, who introduced her to that? Maybe she just heard it when she was younger, and she did a decent cover of it. But yeah, that song, there's something about that, especially like it's very, very anthemic, and Kiss has always been an anthemic entity. I mean, except for like sometimes when they've done some kind of different stuff, X and Sex, maybe like probably not that anthemic, but that tune in particular, wow, just phenomenal, timeless track for me, as well. So I totally agree with you on that.
It was definitely a dance tune, though.
Yes.
Or I should say,
agree.
people could dance to it. It was funny. My dad was a principal at an elementary school, and he borrowed it from us for one of their dances. so yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, he borrowed it for one of their dances. He put his name on it so that no one would steal it. So our copy of that still has his name on it. But
very cool.
So yeah, definitely danceable. Maybe that's why it's being streamed more too. Kids today, they're more accepting of the dance disco style of it, and maybe they're not as familiar with the older hard rock stuff, or for whatever reason, it's a popular tune.
At the time, the band was on the verge of the end for this version or lineup, and of course, I had no idea. At this point, because this was my jumping on point for me getting enlisted in the Kiss Army. Now, for Bill, though, he was already enlisted, right?
Yeah, I enlisted in kindergarten, as a matter of fact.
That's amazing.
Maybe not quite kindergarten, but yeah, I woke up one morning. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I heard music coming from downstairs, and the only thing that I could compare it to was like Elvis or Chuck Berry. My parents still listen to some of that. It was really the only type of music that I could compare it to. I thought it was, like a new Elvis record or whatever. I was really young. That was my only comparison. And went downstairs, found out it was my babysitter, and she was playing Kiss Alive.
Wow! Oh my God.
I took a look at the cover. So that's the cover with their concert. I saw the makeup, the guitars, the drums, fire, smoke, and I was hooked.
Was that Kiss Live maybe that you were exposed to first?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it was Kiss Live. But yeah, so Dynasty, came out in 79, so it was probably 6 or 7. Yep. So yeah, so shortly after that, Dynasty came out, and just had to have it. So
Peter Criss at this point had been in a car accident, and Ace Frehley was becoming disenchanted with not being heard enough in the songwriting and in the overall songwriting process, even like wanting to do like more lead vocals. Then he had some alleged drug and party attitude that was going on, I guess, if we do some research here, which we have. So even though this would be the last album that they were probably kind of quote unquote all on together, they weren't. If you go back into some kind of historical thing, they were not playing together on this album. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, I think Peter Criss was in a car accident, I think, and
yeah,
he couldn't play the drums well enough that they brought in someone else to play the drums. I think he may have sang on the album, and then he had some writing credits to it, but they didn't all perform on it together.
It's a very strange scenario, right? Because they were becoming the Kiss Army at this point. They were so using advertising at this point and just trying to be out there and like showing that, this is not only a musical group, but you're also able to grab onto us as a product, right? they ensnared me, man. I had no idea what was going on. I just know that when I saw Kiss Meets the Phantom, it was almost like in unison with this Kiss Dynasty album. Do you remember Kiss Meets the Phantom, Bill?
I totally remember Kiss Meets the Phantom. Yeah, it was amazing. Obviously had a big impact on me and, millions of other kids too. They were marketing geniuses at this point. They had Halloween masks.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Those masks that never fit right with the rubber band that would like snap in the back of your head and beat the hell out of your ears.
Yeah. And you couldn't breathe. They got all fogged up and wet from your breath. They were disgusting.
Yep.
They had the Kiss masks. They had lunch boxes. They had this.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yep, lunch boxes. I mean, right. They put their name on anything. They're just brilliant.
So is that still Paul and Gene's design, you think? Like they were just like the entrepreneurs of the group, and they just kind of like said, hey, this is where we're going with it. We got to put our faces on everything, or this is like their 7th album, right? I think like once the mask, like being like in the mask or the face paint caught on, they were like, hey, we can be superheroes, and then they actually became superheroes, like to us little impressionable kids, which I thought was pretty awesome. I'm like, good on them for that, actually.
Yeah, I think they realized that they had a big audience in kids. They loved it. The whole stage show, the makeup, the fire, the lights, explosions. Kids really loved it. And I think, Paul and Gene, they were entrepreneurs and they were marketing geniuses. They decided, hey, let's put our logo on everything because it'll sell.
Everything.
Do you remember a show on PBS called 3, 2, 1 Contact?
I do. 3, 2, 1 Contact.
That's the one.
Make contact.
They had an episode about the science of lighting, and for it, they went to a Kiss concert and talked to the lighting designers on this show.
Oh my gosh! Really?
It was incredible.
Killer.
It showed them setting up the show, operating the show, doing the moving lights, the explosions, everything from from a behind the scenes perspective. In addition to Kiss Meets the Phantom, because I think these came out right around the same time. I mean, yeah, that really took the imagination of tons of impressionable kids. We loved it. So yeah, great episode.
They had a great agent, apparently. How could you be more out there at that point in time? Like almost the 80s when there was no internet. It was like just like, hey, how can we just keep going? And then obviously like Marvel even put out like a Kiss comic book.
Right. Yeah.
Man, they just became more than just a musical thing. They became an entity in the world. And like for impressionable kids, like, for me and possibly for you as well, it was like, man, I want more. This is freaking killer. It's so cool. I mean, the Star Child, he's got this power in his, star eye, and the demon, he's throwing fire out of his gullets of his belly. The Starman, he's from outer space, and the Catman, well, he wasn't that cool. But yeah, the Catman. So going back to some of the tracks that were on the album, I had no idea that 2000 Man was a Rolling Stone cover. Did you know that?
No, I had no idea. Obviously, back then, I didn't know that for years and years. And I love that song.
I do too.
I adore it. I didn't know. Yeah, I had no idea it was a Rolling Stones song. I didn't know, but I just loved it. It's a great tune.
That was one of the reasons why my Kiss Dynasty record got scratched, because I don't know. I have no idea why that song instilled me to dance on my bed and go crazy. But 2000 Man, I just love that song, and I love that version of it. And actually, like the part where it's like, and my kids, they just don't understand me at all. It's like, wow, okay, this guy has got something to say, 7-year-old self, 6-year-old self was just loving every second of that song. And I would be dancing and jumping on the bed to that song. I love that version of it. And I don't actually, I didn't actually know that was a Stones cover either. Charisma. I like the chorus of that a lot. And I had no idea, back in the day that Gene was possibly being a little bit fancy with himself, like making notions so that he's in, basically nobody can resist him, I guess, at this point.
Well, and I liked that song. I still kind of like it, but I find it very difficult to listen to nowadays because it's really cringeworthy. Just how he describes himself. It's like, oh, dude, I don't need to hear that. But
yeah, the chorus is good.
It's a catchy tune, and I think it also says, a lot about, Kiss in general, and obviously how young we were at the time listening to it. We had no idea what these guys were singing about. You listen to some of these lyrics today, and it's like, oh my God, the innuendo, either implied innuendo or just over the top. It's like we had no idea what these guys were singing about.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, when I was 6 or 7, I was listening to the album. All I heard, I didn't hear like. And actually, like the way they recorded the album, his vocal track was kind of like, "You want me?" Like it was kind of like a little bit under the regular scope of like listening, and then all of a sudden, charisma, charisma. Well, that's a good part. That's awesome.
Yeah, right.
It was almost a little disguised, like a little bit what they were saying, but the last tune that I think that I gravitated to was like the last track on the album, which is "Save Your Love," which is pretty decent. I like that too. It was very catchy.
I love Ace's vocals. I had his solo album. He doesn't get to sing often, but when he does, I'm a big fan. So definitely "Save Your Love" is an honorable mention on that.
Definitely honorable mention. So what does it mean to us? I recall being enamored with Kiss Meets the Phantom, and I believe they showed it on TV at some point, like regular TV. I mean, I was like 6 or 7 years old, and all of a sudden Kiss Meets the Phantom was on TV. And yes, it was a low budget sci-fi, fantasy kind of style thing, but this was like Kiss becoming superheroes. So this is what basically made me gravitate to this band at this point. I had not been exposed to them at this time. I don't know, I'm not sure quite what happened, but this was actually what was my jumping on point with this band. Kiss were superheroes in a low-budget sci-fi epic. I was instantly smitten. The Demon and the Star Child were my favorite. They ruled in that. Man, I should really rewatch that for sure. But maybe I shouldn't, Bill.
Just save it for memory. No, you definitely rewatch it. I haven't watched it in a long time either, and I think I should. That was a big deal when that came out. That was prime time. I remember they did a lot of advertising for it. It was exciting. I know that we had it. I want to say we had it recorded on VHS for a little while.
Nice.
Not sure what happened to that.
Right. Yeah, that film was what made me ask for any Kiss record for my birthday. Oh my God, I need a Kiss. And I actually was able to. I would love to know if I still have that. But I had like the full 100+ magazine that accompanied that show. Like Kiss Meets the Phantom. There was a magazine that accompanied it as well, and I had it.
Wow. And
that was like, I would go through that like days. Like I would just go through that and look at the pictures and the visuals. I was so enamored, especially with Paul Stanley and the Star Child and the way they portrayed him in that movie. I was like, oh my God, he had this star, like had this epic power that came out. I was just so smitten with that, man. And, Kiss's Gene, the Demon, like, they knew what they were doing, man. They really knew what they were doing.
I had forgotten about the accompanying magazine that they did. And, going back to being brilliant marketers, too, they were all over every magazine, like Tiger Beat and Teen Beat and every magazine for kids that you could think of. They were on the cover, and everybody wanted to know, what do they look like without their makeup on? That was always a big...
Oh, boy.
photographers were always trying to catch them, without their makeup on.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a big deal. So when I was 14, my 16-year-old brother took me to a Kiss concert, and Ted Nugent opened, which is, obviously Ted Nugent was a bigger deal in the earlier 70s, and he was opening.
Sure.
Yeah, so this was his turn to open up. So he was the opener for Kiss. Lot of drunk Ted Nugent fans were there, and my brother was wearing a Kiss shirt, and this drunk Ted Nugent fan got in his face and said something like, "This is Ted Nugent land." Yeah, it was kind of funny, but it was a good show.
Well, that's a memory for sure. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
The Nuge, man. The Nuge, Bill.
The Nuge, man. Don't mess with the Nuge. This is Nugent land. Oh my God. So my brother was able. He was able to defuse the situation. So.
That's good. That's great. That's awesome.
And
that's
that was
a good memory, though, man.
That was back when you could smoke in public too, so you can imagine how smoky the
oh my God, yes, I can imagine. So, essentially, their historical oversaturation at this point grabbed us both, right, Bill? They were able to ensnare us.
They were, yes. The image was incredible, obviously, right? They had their name on, they had their logo on everything. But you know what? In the end, they write really good songs. They really do. Like you had mentioned before, they write anthems, just really simple, catchy tunes.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, they're good songs. I remember I was listening to an interview. It was either with Gene or Paul. This was right around when guitarists were shredding. So you had these shredders like Yngwie Malmsteen playing 1,000 notes a minute. And
sure.
Yeah, one of the guys, it was either Gene or Paul. He said something like, these guys can play 1,000 notes a minute, but can they write a catchy song? Can they write a catchy song? And it's true, man. Kiss, they write good, catchy songs. We know they're not the Beatles. We know they're not Led Zeppelin. They're Kiss, and they're good at what they do. And they write songs that stay in your memory and make you want to get up and party. And that's what they do, and that's what they're good at.
I really feel that they did their job very well, especially at this time. And even though that they may have had a falling out, because as we know, 3 years later, we would lose any kind of form of the original lineup. It would be changed up. Paul Stanley and Gene would be the continued main lineup for the rest of history, essentially. Peter Criss would go away. Not sure if it was always going to be a car accident thing or something else, but also Ace Frehley would go his own way, like maybe not thinking that he was being taken advantage of with his prowess doing his songwriting style, and wanted to be heard in a different way. So this will be the last incarnation. So this album, Dynasty, was like basically another historical point for the band that is Kiss. And little did I know that this would actually be that album, because the next album that they would release was going to be what, Bill?
The album right after that was Unmasked, because
it is.
Like we had mentioned before, everybody wanted to know what they looked like without their makeup on.
Right. It's kind of funny because it's like where I jumped on, the intrigue was already like this high, and they had released those 4 solo albums, and I had no idea about those. And I would see them like in Walgreens or Woolworth, like the solo albums, like, wow, those are cool. Like just walking by them and seeing their faces, like, they looked like, superheroes again.
Right.
But I had no idea what turmoil and what kind of weirdness was going on within the band. And so this Dynasty album was kind of a culmination of the end of the original members, which is very interesting to me. So maybe I jumped on a little too late, but I was only 6 or 7. So
you can never jump on too late, but it was definitely right. I think it was the turning point. I would think.
It is. Yeah.
It kind of marks, their hard rock roots, which, they would kind of take a little bit of a different direction for a while. then get back to their hard rock roots and, switch it up a little bit. But I think it definitely, for me, it's something that you kind of experience with bands to this day, is experiencing a band change their sound. And it's just a matter of, do you like the direction that they're going? Are you going to stick with the band as a fan? I think at some point bands just get tired of playing the same thing, night after night,
Sure.
and they don't want to keep putting out the same album. So they'll experiment for a little while. And obviously this was a big experimental album for them.
Interesting story for sure. So thanks guys for listening in to another episode of Talkin Records, episode 2, Kiss's Dynasty. You can find us at Talkin Records on Apple, iTunes, and at Podbean. Thank you so much. Good night.
Put the needle on the record, put the needle on the record, put the needle on the record and dance with me.
Talkin Records. Talkin Records. Talkin Records. That's right.